ASEAN Breakfast Call Dialogue, widening your horizons. Hey, this is Arlene.
Hi, this is Gowri.
And of course, we are at our third segment of ABC Dialogue. Today is a bit interesting because we are going to talk an issue that is very, very controversial in Malaysia, of course. It is about the 1MDB controversy, which is a walking time bomb, apparently.
And a lot of Malaysians have a lot of questions about it, and that's why we have a guest here today who is going to clarify and answer some of the questions.
It's no other than YB Tony Phua, Member of Parliament for Petaling, Jaya, Utara. Hi.
Hi, good morning.
Morning.
Good morning. So, before we start talking about explaining more about the 1MDB controversy, perhaps a bit of a background on how this particular investment fund agency become a hot topic, especially in today's time.
I think it took a while. I think the first time I raised the 1MDB issue was back in 2011.
Really?
Back in 2011, that was 3 years ago. But that time it was hard to have traction because it was all technical. It's about bonds, about murabahah notes, it's about Petro-Saudi investment, it's about oil reserves in Caspian Sea, and it was about investments, and these are not things that normally people will look at. And it came out about the same time as the NFC scandal, the cows and condo scandal. That was only 250 million. That's peanuts compared to the multi-billion ringgit scandal we have here. But it was very difficult to get traction then. So it took a while for everyone to start understanding what it is all about.
What has changed from 3 years ago up until now? Why has it...
I think...
why it became so big?
Two reasons. One, because we were persistent in raising the issue, and number two, it is their own fault that the scandal got bigger and bigger. So there were more and more dirt that got discovered, and as their debt grew, their problems increased, and I think the intensity of the scrutiny, particularly from the financial community, started to reach a tipping point, and suddenly everyone got very interested in 1MDB, including our friends in the Barisan Nasional.
Which is interesting because Malaysians generally love scandals. So you see a lot of gossip entertainment show.
More cows though.
but like you said initially, the 1MDB controversy in the initial state lacks cows and condos. Yes. And that's why you cannot compete with the NFC scandal. But now you actually have a character which is a guy called Jolo. Who is he? How he became the center of this scandal?
The official story is he helped founded 1MDB, and he helped first structured the first loan that the federal government guaranteed to allow 1MDB to raise 5 billion ringgit. That time it was only 5 billion ringgit back in 2009, and to help introduce the investment in a vehicle called Petro-Saudi to form a joint venture. That was back in September 2009. And that's the official role that he has had. But his name has stuck around.
Obviously, he's famous for organizing events where Paris Hilton will be there.
Absolutely. These days it's Lindsay Lohan. I'm jealous. And obviously his name has stuck around. And despite official denials, there has been documents exposed by the website Sarawak Report, which showed correspondence between the top management of 1MDB together with Jolo as late as 2011. So that showed that his connection with the group has gone well beyond the initial setup of the company.
So if I were to ask you from a perspective of maybe like a layman, a typical Malaysian who reads about 1MDB and they are wondering, why should I be so concerned about this? What would you
I think
tell
the
them?
biggest issue with 1MDB today is debt. The debt has obviously ballooned from 5 billion ringgit when it first started to more than 42 billion ringgit today. And the concern obviously is whether the debts can be repaid and how the debts were accumulated. Two things. One is the debt is used to acquire a lot of assets, And the problem with these assets is they bought them at inflated prices.
Mm-hmm.
So once you buy them at inflated prices, the concern is whether the returns from these assets are enough to pay off the debts. That's number one. And number two, the bigger worry, a more direct worry, is the way they raise these debts were very expensive. The cost of raising these debts were very, very expensive for an entity 100% owned by the Malaysian government. As an example, I think one of the issues today is why is it that when the 1MDB raised a total of 6.5 billion US dollars, the fees paid, this is stated in the prospectus, inverted commas, certain commissions, inverted commas means the quote from the prospectus, certain commissions, fees and expenses, okay, amounted to more than 10% of the funds raised, which is shockingly ridiculous, because for raising the amount of money that size, the type of fees that should be paid should be 0.1%, 0.2%, not more than 10%. So we are not paying 10 times more than what the market pays. We are paying 100 times more than what the market pays. So the question is, where did the money go?
So they are not really following the market price
They
at
are
all.
not. They are not. And obviously, as government, I wouldn't expect them to collect the entire 10%. You know, so surely there's something behind that 10%, and who takes a cut of that 10% via structured hidden discounts or whatsoever. Someone is benefiting from the fundraising exercises carried out by 1MDB.
Let's go back to why 1MDB is initiated anyway. I'm just curious, because we have Khazanah investment. Why we need a One Malaysian
Development Berhad.
Development Berhad to help us to develop, certain high risk and high cost area
Well,
or industry.
1MDB was set up with an objective that was acceptable. It was set up with an objective to venture into areas that can take Malaysia forward. If you look at their website, you read their vision, there's nothing particularly...
I'm reading it. Be bold and daring to break new grounds and
right.
do things differently. Which
Absolutely.
Was said by
So
the Prime Minister.
there's nothing wrong with that. So Khazanah has the role of managing the existing assets of the government, your Tenaga Nasional, Telekom Malaysia, Malaysian Airlines, etc. They have their hands full. So you want a new fund to go into new challenging areas to take Malaysia to the next level. But what has happened instead was that the two key business areas of 1MDB today is one, the power sector, which is a very mature sector, instead of
the energy sector.
The energy sector, the power sector, the energy sector, which is a very mature area where we have a lot of established listed companies competing against one another. And what 1MDB is doing is essentially nationalizing all these entities.
Isn't it a
one.
good thing? I mean,
That's not a good thing.
nationalizing energy.
No, nationalizing energy by buying back the concessions at low cost is a good thing.
I see.
But nationalizing energy by paying premium prices to all these tycoons is a terrible thing. And it also reduces the competitive landscape in Malaysia. So you won't have more players competing to offer lower tariffs to Malaysians.
Is it the problem of nationalization, or is it the problem of mismanagement of government's fund?
Both.
Okay.
Nationalization in the power sector is bad because there's no need for a monopoly. There are areas where a monopoly makes sense when you have, for example, the power grid. You can't have multiple power grids running around the country. Whereas power plants, you can have multiple power plants run by different operators, offering the lowest possible price to Tenaga to offer to Malaysians.
It's like telecommunication, I guess, if you're
That's
going
right,
to put
mobile.
it in a layman's understanding of energy.
Yeah. So
Like
imagine
having
if
Maxis and DG.
Imagine if there's only Telecom offering you mobile services today. So whereas now you have DG, Maxis, and many other operators in the market competing in terms of prices. So that's number one. And number two, business that they are in is in real estate. Bandar Malaysia, Tun Razak Exchange. Malaysia has got some of the best developers in the world. Why do we need the state to offer a new property developer? What new ground will they break by creating a massive property developer? We have enough GLCs that are property developers. Sime Dabi, Gowri, and many others are property developers.
Was there a justification for...
There's no official justification. They have never answered this question per se to us, whether in parliament or in public, except to say that they are trying to generate value from the assets.
But it's also, I mean, sorry to interrupt, but it's also because Najib's administration, compared to probably the previous ones, he wants to make the government as a corporate government, as in like being part of the players.
No. That's not the objective. That's the point. The objective in Najib's government, written very clearly in government transformation plan, is to It's to let the private sector lead the economy.
But is it doing it?
Exactly, they're doing the exact opposite. So what I'm saying is that what 1MDB is doing now is the exact opposite of the objectives clearly stated in GTP, Government Transformation Program, where they want the private sector to lead. And if you talk to developers today, they will tell you they are really upset with Tun Razak Exchange and Bandar Malaysia because it severely constrained their markets unfairly. Because 1MDB, what they did was that they have a piece of land. In order to develop it with an advantage against the other property developers, the government gave them special benefits. They gave property developers who develop within 1MDB's land area 70% tax off.
Wow.
And they gave financial institutions that will move into this area 100% tax benefits, which is not available to any other property developers. So
we should cancel GST and like these people.
Absolutely. And I can tell you more about property development for the Tun Razak Exchange as well. It's called KL International Financial District. But it's nonsense because financial institutions today do not need a geographical location to work together. It's all by the press of a button. You need fiber optic cables, you need telecommunications. You do not need to be situated in one particular geographical sector.
That's a very comprehensive description on YMDB. Okay, but you still have an answer. Is there a conflict of interest between 1MDB and Khazanah Investment?
There is and there isn't. Obviously, if 1MDB hasn't ventured into property or into the power sector, Khazanah may have. But in this particular case, I don't see Khazanah being particularly interested in the power energy sector nor real estate, because those are not the sectors that will add value or tremendous value to our country. Khazanah has been more involved in the special projects like wafer manufacturing, and perhaps some of the more advanced aquaculture developments. The performance of such investments are questionable, but at least they are trying to venture into new areas where Malaysians are not good in or have not attempted.
So you do think Khazanah is a great initiative by the government, but not 1MDB. Is that what you mean?
Well, you always need a sovereign wealth fund. You cannot run away from a sovereign wealth fund. You have to put your assets to use to maximize returns for the government. And Khazanah is the existing vehicle. Whether they are doing a good job or not, that's a separate story. But you need an existing vehicle. Now, they created 1MDB with the sole purpose of trying to focus entirely on breaking new ground. But what has happened over the last 4 years is that instead of breaking new ground, they are going back to all the mature not sunset industries, but the mature industries that doesn't really require any additional help from the government.
Why you mention that energy is a sunset industry? Because
it's not a sunset industry, it's a mature industry.
Because if I'm not mistaken, one of the key development in the energy industry is to provide more solar power to the country.
Yep. So we have a program, solar power, for example. We have a program under SEDA, which is Sustainable Energy Development Authority, and they were given quotas and subsidies, which we are paying via our Tenaga Nasional bills today, to various players in the market, corporate as well as individuals, to encourage participation in the solar industry. But out of the blue, outside of this quota that has been provided to SEDA to manage for the solar power, the government decided to directly award, without any tender, a 50 megawatt solar power plant contract to 1MDB. Why are you creating an animal without competition to compete with the private sector, which you have already set up under SEDA to manage? So it is clearly a policy to favour 1MDB. And
is Najib really aware of this, or
Absolutely.
is it something that is happening behind him. Like he's like, what is this happening?
Well, I would only say that either way, he is culpable.
Okay.
That either he doesn't know what's happening, which I doubt. But if he really doesn't know what's happening, then he is a very poor prime minister. But I'm more inclined to think that he knows that it is happening, and he has no choice but to allow it to happen, because these are measures to bail out 1MDB.
Yeah. Did any of the representative from 1MDB actually provide any answers, or at least give some direction about what they are actually doing with their funds?
If you're reading their formal press statements, and you can go to their website to do that, I welcome everyone to go to the website and read their formal statements. It is your general statements that when we invested 7.2 billion ringgit in Cayman Islands, it is with a licensed financial institution. They are accredited worldwide. The purpose of the investment is to maximize returns based on investment in strategic areas. These are all financial mumbo jumbo that doesn't mean anything. No,
especially to us. I mean, we don't even know what is 1MDB.
It just sounds great that they put it in the funds that will maximize returns with the objective of long run, short term, whatever. But the point that we questioned why they invested 7.2 billion ringgit in Cayman Islands is who did they invest the money with? Did they invest with UBS, Morgan Stanley, or JP Morgan, Goldman Sachs, all these big financial names, with where the people will feel secure that at least the right people are looking after our funds? Or did they invest it in some unknown entity? I mean, there are a lot of licensed financial firms in the world, hundreds of thousands of them. Why pick a firm that nobody knows about, based in Hong Kong, with two partners?
Oh, who are they?
Two partners with dubious track record that was founded, and they refused to name the firm. It was found out through third-party sources, and in fact, in this case, Singapore Business Times discovered who was managing their funds. Bridge Capital Partners. You would have never heard of them, and the partners involved in this are people with not so great track record. They have never managed funds this size before, so it raises suspicion as to why must 7.2 billion not be brought back to the country and repay the old debts that they have, but instead be invested in Cayman Islands when nobody is able to access the records of the funds.
Should the person be accountable is the CEO of 1MDB, which is Muhammad Hazem bin
He's the
Abdul
second
Rahman.
CEO of 1MDB. But to be honest, I just think that they are carrying out orders.
I see.
Okay, they are executors. They are not really the people making the calls.
Yeah. Can you explain how Jolo actually fit into this picture? Because he's just a young chap that probably has a good connection with the Prime
I probably
Ministers.
cannot say what I want to say without getting a defamation suit on my head. He structured the first deal. I think that one is clear. It's a fact. And the first deal I can say was fairly shocking. This was one of the first things that I brought up, was that it was a federal government guaranteed loan, 30-year loan, and the government paid, the 1MDB paid 5.75% interest on that loan. When it's federal government guaranteed, it is extremely high. It's extremely high. In the market, 10-year loans is about 3.8%. So give and take, if it is 30 years, it's probably 4.5%, 5%. Even at 5%, the 0.75% excess in terms of interest rate, and the bonds are the loans are all given to one party, allows that middleman to then resell these loans to third parties at higher prices.
Wow.
Okay, the speculation as published in Kinibi's as well as The Age is that this middleman transaction alone allowed the middleman to make approximately 1 billion ringgit from a 5 billion ringgit loan. So, to me, there's no reason why a federal government guaranteed bond should be paying interest rates of 5.75%. And not only they paid interest rate of 5.75%, they offered discounts to the bond. What does discounts mean? A lot of people won't know what a bond discount means. It means that if I borrow 100 ringgit, all you need to give me is 88 ringgit.
Okay.
So that's a 12% discount. But when I pay back, I have to pay you back 100 ringgit. When I service, my interest is not interest on 88, it's interest on 100 ringgit. But I only collect 88 ringgit. So if you add the interest rate of 5.75%, if you take in consideration the discount, I'm paying interest of approximately 6.7%, which is staggeringly high for a government guaranteed loan.
You seem to know a lot of all these secrets. I would say secrets, government secrets.
It's been 3 years.
But how do you actually access all this information? Is it like out to the public, or do you get like someone doing it secretly from you?
No,
to dig information.
Well, I think it comes from multiple sources. A lot of the facts comes from the official source, which is actually documented in the financial statements which they lodge with the Companies Commission. So in there, the basic facts are always there. They took a bond for 30 years, paying an interest of 75%, at a discount of 12% or 11.8%. Those will all be stated in there. The thing about the Malaysian community is no one actually looks at these numbers. Anyone bothered to go to the Companies Commission, can I request for a copy of accounts and pay about 150 ringgit for that accounts to review it? Most people don't do that.
But it's available to the public.
It's available.
So anyone can actually make an investigation. But why the investigation and the revelation comes from you and not
because nobody else
from the Anti-Corruption Commission? Sorry, I need to ask this.
Was that a loaded question? Well, we are hungry to check on the government to ensure that our taxpayers' money is properly spent. And obviously the key issue here is whether our authorities are equally hungry to do the same. And despite the fact that I think given the recent government assemblyman who has filed, government UMNO political leader who has filed a police report against 1MDB, we all doubt that any actions will be done. There's actually no obvious corruption involved, in the sense that, well, I offered the bond at a higher interest rate. So, who took the money? No, it was above the board transaction. It's a bit like saying that they bought the binoculars for 2,000 ringgit or 9,990 ringgit instead of 200 ringgit. And when MNC did the investigation, they said there's no corruption involved. They just bought it at too high a price.
It's about that decision,
that has
right?
to account for something as well, right? You can't just
stupidity.
Okay.
So stupidity is not corruption. That's how they get around it. Well, I could have got it cheaper, but I didn't. Not because I was corrupt, but because I was stupid. So because of that, MNC said, "Oh, no corruption involved."
That's a very good one. We should all kind of joke. Anyway, we'll take a short break. When we return, more discussion with YB Tony Phua. ASEAN Breakfast Call Dialogue, widening your horizons. Hey, this is Arlene.
Hi, this is Gowri.
And we are back with YB Tony Phua. So we have an interesting discussion earlier, but we are going to talk more about the issue that you brought to the Parliament, 1MDB controversy. And you said you have been raising about this in the Parliament and outside Parliament since 3 years ago.
Yes.
But only now, like everyone is talking about it. You just go to the newspaper and just flip through. It will be like one of the main controversy.
Even on Twitter, on Facebook.
That's right.
Yeah.
It is the keyword today, 1MDB.
But one thing that I find to be very, very ironic is, usually in Malaysia, when you bring about certain scandal or certain issue to the Parliament or even out to the public, it's always a very partisan issue. Like it's always like, oh, this is a DAP issue, that's why they want to bring out all this controversy. For this 1MDB in particular, it seems like even the pro-government politicians and supporters are starting to feel that, hey, there's something wrong with 1MDB, and we are also curious to know about this. Why?
I think the Malay word for it, there's a word that a UMNO politician told me before the last general election, was rakus. Greed, and excessive greed that has caused unease even within UMNO, whom we find is rampant with abuse and corruption. But even within UMNO itself, they are increasingly uncomfortable with the excess involved in 1MDB. I mean, you hear about 250 million cows and condo scandal, and if we raise it today in Parliament, the other side will still
defend it.
They'll what do you call it? Create a ruckus. They will heckle you, despite the fact that you know that it was a bad deal. But in 1MDB's case, when we raise it, there's no one in the backbenchers that actually wants to stand up and defend the government. All at best they can do is that 1MDB is owned by the government, so we should do whatever we can to support 1MDB. So it's a very neutral, wrong argument, but a very neutral way of saying it rather than saying anything else. And if you read the blogosphere, some of the most ardent, hardcore UMNO bloggers around, people like Outside the Box. I had a video that was fairly viral, which I was quite surprised, talking about 1MDB. He actually told the UMNO guys out there to go listen to my to my video. He says, ignore the part where he tells people to vote for Pakatan. But all the rest of things he said about 1MDB are all true.
Oh my god, you just got an additional listeners.
And the video went completely viral. We had like I was shocked because most of our videos, a good reach would be approximately 10,000, 15,000 views. In this case, we had 180,000 views. I was shocked. It's a record for me, for many people. Yeah.
But why they have faith in the allegation that you made? Because it's from you, their nemesis.
Yeah, I think the evidence involved in 1MDB are sufficiently obvious today. In the initial days when we first raised it, even in PAC, I was often blocked. 1MDB was often given the benefit of the doubt. You cannot have what we call sangkaan jahat. You cannot have bad thoughts about 1MDB. But nowadays, with all the documents that are coming out, whether it's the letter of support by the government, or the bonds that are mispriced, or the fact that 1MDB creates their profits from property revaluations, all these are facts which are, what do you call it? What's the word for it? Unchallengeable. I mean, it cannot be challenged. Those are facts of the matter.
Because you base on real data
on real data
from their official data.
From their own official data. And the data has finally, after harping on it for a while, sunk into even the UMNO political leaders. And as a result, they know that something is wrong in there. They can't quite point their finger at what, but they know that it's a big problem, and it may actually sink the administration. And some are obviously taking the opportunity to bring down Najib.
Oh, okay.
So the anti-Najib camp are using this as a vehicle to bring down the Prime Minister.
This is actually my subsequent question. Like, could this be a non-partisan issue because Najib's leadership has become so weak that even he couldn't get the faith of other members of UMNO to support him?
Yes. So some would argue this way. In the past administration, the UMNO administration, when the top leadership makes their cake, they would share half the cake with everyone else. In this particular case, the people at the grassroots are disgruntled because they see the top taking a big chunk of the cake and none of it is trickling down to them. And hence the disgruntlement with the existing Prime Minister. And the reason why it's not trickling down to them is very simply because the vehicle, 1MDB, is actually not making money.
So what's the updates now? What's happening currently with the government and also with the opposition in terms of handling this issue in the parliament?
Well, for the government, is a race against time to rescue 1MDB. 1MDB is in Well, actually, over the past 2 weeks, I realized that it is in greater financial straits than I originally thought they were. I thought they were in trouble, but I didn't realize that they were in this deep a trouble. They have 2 billion. Out of that 42 billion, only 2 billion was due in November, and they have been unable to repay that debt. They were awarded contracts, power plant contracts. The first one being in February, 11 billion ringgit contract to build a power plant in Negeri Sembilan.
For electricity.
And they were supposed to have started work, but they can't start work because they have no money. And because of that, the project has been delayed. They have actually applied for an extension to the project, and they wanted to raise 8.4 billion ringgit, another 8.4 billion ringgit of loan, specifically to build this power plant. The problem with it was that the subscribers were very low, and they were forced to cancel the fundraising exercise and postpone it to next year. So they are stuck because the old debts that they have no money to pay. And they need the profits from the new projects that's been awarded to 1MDB to help them repay the old loans. But to get the new profits, they need to start off the project, and they need more money to start off the project, and they can't get the new money. So it is a race against time for them now to try and find money to cover up the earlier holes.
So where do you suspect that they would eventually get the money? Is it from other forms of taxes?
They will it could come from various means. Government can give them more cheap land so that they can take the land and pledge it with the bank to raise some money. They are trying to list their energy entities in the stock exchange next year. The listing exercise will be a key focal point to see if it is able to further sustain itself and how much money it can actually raise from that exercise to keep it going. And we suspect that they won't raise enough money from the listing exercise to keep themselves afloat.
The issue of 1MDB has gotten Niger under fire in its own UMNO general election, and also he has a lot of really dubious overseas funding and also dealings. But how much of these are actually facts, and how much of these are actually maybe just a bit blown out of a proportion?
Well, the facts of the matter is that they invested 1.9 billion in a loan to Petro Saudi. And Petro Saudi is a vehicle that was owned by a mysterious guy by the name of Tariq Obaid Isam Ahmad.
I like when
Tariq
you put the
Isam.
word mysterious guy. It adds drama to the
Because
whole
when
name.
you search for that name, you would expect that if you were to put in 1.9 billion US dollar to invest in the company, you would expect the company to have track record, run by someone with experience. But when you search for that name, the name did not exist on Google before 2009.
Oh, okay.
Okay, and the only thing we knew about him is that he went to the same school as Jolo.
It's all about the schools.
Starting to sound like a movie.
And when 1MDB invested in the company, he was barely 30 years old.
Oh.
So I'm jealous.
I think we are all.
So why did they invest in such a deal? We were informed that when 1MDB first invested the $1 billion US in the company, Petro Saudi was supposed to invest 1.5 billion in the joint venture. But they didn't put in cash. We put in cash. They put in a supposed asset in Caspian Sea, which supposedly has oil.
Why you say supposedly?
Well, that's what they claim. It's oil
Okay.
reserve. They claim to be a place where you can drill for oil. So when we asked in the Public Accounts Committee, where exactly is this spot with oil? They say it's secret. And we asked them, how do you know there's oil there? Well, next to it, Shell is there, Esso is there, so there must be oil in the same spot. So how is that an answer to the Public Accounts Committee? It's not convincing at all. And since then, they put money, 7.2 billion ringgit in Cayman Islands. They have raised money to form joint ventures with Abra via the International Petroleum Investment Corporation of Abu Dhabi. And despite the announcement, a big announcement, we invest $3 billion US, Abu Dhabi invest $3 billion US, we will fund strategic initiatives. 1 year later, nothing happened.
I see.
So where did all this money go?
I'm also curious. I mean, just to make. I mean, at the end of the day, I mean, 1MDB is there, but how much of these are actually full of scams and scandals and or mismanagement? And
I call it.
But how much of it are actually, good work? Because at the end of the day, it's an investment fund. They are a development agency that is under the government. A lot of people are working there and being accountable as well. I mean, at the end of the day, do you think 1MDB can still be rescued?
No, I think it's beyond redemption. Or rather, you're asking someone who would say that it is beyond redemption. But it is my personal, sincere view that 1MDB has been so badly mismanaged that whatever efforts by the government now to rescue the company will jeopardize other sectors of the market. What is happening now is there will be a crowding out in Malaysia, both in the power sector as well as in the property sector. Property developers are not going to be convinced to invest in Malaysia because you give special privileges to your own companies. There's no level playing field. In the power sector, you will find that people who are formerly good players in the market, they were given preferential contracts, but they are now competitive. They compete via the open tender. Open tenders are now scrapped, and contracts are awarded directly to 1MDB, and this does not give confidence to any investment players in the market, whether local or
But
foreign.
do they even need, competition in this kind of sector?
If you don't have competition,
Since you say it's a matured sector.
Yeah, if you don't have competition, it's matured purely because you have competition. So they can compete. So they get the lowest prices for electricity tariffs. Now it is awarded directly to 1MDB. How do you know that that's the lowest price that we will pay? And given that it is awarded directly, and the purpose of awarding to 1MDB is to help them make profits, there is the tendency, obviously, to award the tariffs at the higher than likely prices.
So how all this would affect Malaysians in general? Because at the end of the day, if it's just a government mismanagement, probably the worst we will have like GST next year. But if you're going to put this 1MDB issue in a bigger picture scenario, would it affect Malaysian economy? Would we become bankrupt because of the mismanagement in terms
It's a bit hard for a country to become bankrupt in the company sense of the word. But we will suffer. We can suffer severe economic crisis as a result of a massive scandal. Now, 1MDB is not able to pay 2 billion ringgit. Now, if it really defaulted on 2 billion, the entire 42 billion comes into default. The entire banking industry in Malaysia then gets screwed because they will all be short of capital. They will all be restricting loans to everyone else who are genuine borrowers. The Malaysian government will then have to step in to raise debt in order to pay off 1MDB's debt. At the end of the day, it is a subsidiary of the government. Guaranteed or otherwise, we have seen that this government will do whatever it can to bail out their entities.
Imagine yourself in Najib's shoe right now. I know you are not part of the Barisan Nasional government, but imagine yourself in Najib's shoe right now. If he were to make the wisest move, either to save 1MDB or to hold certain people accountable, what is the best next step? At least for Malaysians, Malaysian public.
I think for the Malaysian public, if you have a prime minister with a scandal the size of 1MDB in any other country, he would have been forced to resign. But not in Malaysia. And the best thing he can next do is to open up the books of 1MDB and find the best way to rescue the company instead of using all the dubious means of awarding contracts directly at higher prices to benefit that particular company. Because what they are doing is rescuing 1MDB or trying to rescue 1MDB. We're not sure whether it will be rescued, but at the same time jeopardizing the rest of the economy.
Yeah, and especially you mentioned just how the banking sector will be
The banking
severely
sector,
affected.
That's right. Higher electricity tariffs for everyone. So everyone contributes a little bit to save 1MDB by paying for higher prices. But at the end of the day, what the government will tell you is they can't afford subsidies anymore. When in reality, it's because they are offering contracts at higher prices.
So, we are at the end of our discussion today. But before we end this discussion, for Malaysian in general, if there's one thing that you want Malaysians to be very concerned about this 1MDB controversy, what would that be?
I think we need to be concerned about the government's governance. 1MDB isn't the only financial scandal in the government. What we see today is the government is limited by the fact that it has a lot of debt. The federal government debt today is 569 billion ringgit, and the government has very little room to increase it further. So what we are seeing today is the government trying all sorts of alternative, off-budget, hidden means to raise money, including selling their best assets, taking loans via government guarantees, or taking loans by using dubious means of leasing land to subsidiary companies. And all these methods are not seen by the public, are not accounted for. And if a recession is to come, whether created by the global crisis or otherwise, then Malaysia will be hit worse off than many other states. And Malaysians need to be vigilant, and we can only hope that complicated issues like bonds, interest rates and stuff can actually seep through to the man on the street, understanding that the excessive debt that's taken by the government will put us all, especially our children's future, at risk.
Thank you very much, YB Tony Pua.
Thank you.
Thank you.